The heart often becomes attached to someone long before it understands what Allah has written for the future. A person may care deeply, make sincere intentions, and hope for a beautiful outcome, yet the knowledge of what is best remains with Allah alone. This is why the believer does not place their trust in emotions, circumstances, or human promises. The believer turns to Allah. There is a special peace that comes from raising your hands and placing the person you love before the one who created both hearts. Through dua, you ask Allah to bring goodness where there is goodness, guidance where there is uncertainty, and barakah in every matter connected to your future. Today we will explore 5 powerful du'as that can help transform love from a source of worry into an act of worship filled with trust, sincerity, and hope in Allah's perfect wisdom. The du'a that asks Allah to place goodness in the person you love. When a person develops sincere feelings for someone, it is very easy for those feelings to become focused on what they want rather than what Allah knows is best. The heart begins imagining a future, hoping for a particular outcome, and praying that events unfold according to its desires. While there is nothing wrong with hoping for goodness, the believer must remember that love becomes most beneficial when it is guided by wisdom rather than emotion alone. This is why one of the most beautiful du'as a person can make for someone they love is not immediately asking Allah to bring that person into their life. Instead, it is asking Allah to place goodness within that person and to increase them in everything that draws them closer to Him. Many people become so occupied with their own feelings that they forget to pray for the well-being of the person they care about. They pray for the relationship, but they neglect to pray for the individual's faith, character, guidance, and future. Yet if a person truly loves someone for the sake of Allah, their concern should extend beyond their own wishes. They should want goodness for that individual, regardless of what the future ultimately holds. When you sincerely ask Allah to place goodness in the person you love, your dua begins rising above selfish attachment. You are no longer asking only for what benefits you. You are asking Allah to increase them in righteousness, protect them from harm, strengthen their faith, guide their decisions, and bless their future. Such a dua carries a sincerity that reflects genuine care. There is something beautiful about placing a person's affairs before Allah in this manner. Human beings often worry about things they cannot control. They wonder whether someone will make the right choices, whether they will remain guided, whether they will stay close to Allah, and whether their future will be filled with goodness. These concerns can become overwhelming because no human being possesses control over another person's heart. Guidance belongs to Allah. Protection belongs to Allah. Transformation belongs to Allah. This is why dua is so powerful. Instead of becoming consumed by worry, the believer turns toward the one who controls every heart. They ask Allah to increase the person they love in sincerity. They ask Him to protect them from temptation, harmful influences, and poor decisions. They ask Him to surround them with beneficial company and guide them toward choices that will benefit them in this life and the next. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught believers to care deeply about the spiritual condition of others. True concern is not limited to worldly success. It includes concern for faith, character, and closeness to Allah. A person may love someone greatly, but the greatest gift they can ask for on that person's behalf is guidance and righteousness. Many relationships become sources of anxiety because people focus entirely on outcomes. They become preoccupied with questions about marriage, timing, and the future. While these matters are important, there is something even more important. Is this person growing closer to Allah? Is their character improving? Are they becoming the type of person whose life will be filled with barakah? These are matters that deserve sincere dua. Sometimes Allah answers such prayers in ways that are not immediately visible. A person's heart becomes softer, their understanding deepens, their priorities begin changing, they become more mindful of their relationship with Allah. These developments may not happen overnight, but Allah is capable of creating transformation within a heart in ways no human being can achieve. This dua also protects the believer from becoming obsessed with controlling outcomes. When you sincerely ask Allah to place goodness in someone, you begin accepting that Allah's wisdom is greater than your own plans. You recognize that your role is to make dua, maintain sincerity, and trust Allah with what you cannot control. There are many people who spend years worrying about whether someone loves them, whether circumstances will work out, or whether the future will unfold according to their hopes. Yet very few spend that same energy asking Allah to increase goodness within the person they care about. The believer who understands the value of dua shifts their focus toward what truly matters. They ask Allah to make that person pleasing to Him. They ask Allah to protect their faith. They ask Allah to grant them peace, wisdom, sincerity, and beneficial guidance. The beauty of this dua is that it remains beneficial regardless of what Allah ultimately decrees. If that person becomes part of your future, you have asked Allah to increase goodness within them. If Allah chooses a different path, your dua still brought benefit to someone you cared about. In both situations, the act itself becomes a source of reward and sincerity. Love often creates many emotions within the heart, but the believer learns to transform those emotions into worship. Instead of allowing love to become a source of constant worry, they make it a source of dua. Instead of becoming consumed by uncertainty, they place the matter before Allah. Instead of trying to control what belongs to the future, they focus on asking Allah for goodness in the present. When you raise your hands and sincerely ask Allah to place goodness in the person you love, you are acknowledging a beautiful truth. You are recognizing that no one can improve a heart like Allah can. No one can guide a soul like Allah can. No one can protect a future like Allah can. And there is tremendous peace in knowing that the person you care about is being placed before the one whose mercy, wisdom, and knowledge encompass every aspect of their life. That is why this dua is not merely a request, it is an act of trust. It is an expression of sincere concern. And it is one of the most beautiful ways a believer can love someone while keeping their heart attached to Allah above all else. The dua for a heart that remains pure while waiting for Allah's decree. Among the most difficult tests a person can experience is not necessarily the feeling of love itself, but the waiting that often accompanies it. Many people find it easy to remain hopeful when answers arrive quickly. They find it easy to trust when circumstances appear favorable. However, when the future remains unclear, when timelines remain unknown, and when questions seem to have no immediate answers, the heart enters a different kind of test. It is during this period that the believer needs a special dua, a dua that asks Allah to protect the heart from becoming corrupted by impatience, anxiety, unhealthy attachment, or thoughts that lead it away from His guidance. When a person develops sincere feelings for someone, it is natural to think about them often. It is natural to hope for goodness and to desire a future that includes them. Yet the believer must remember that the heart is one of the greatest trusts Allah has given. If it is not protected during periods of waiting, emotions can gradually begin controlling a person rather than serving them. What started as sincere affection can slowly turn into constant worry. Hope can become an obsession. Concern can become emotional exhaustion. This is why asking Allah to keep the heart pure is so important. A pure heart is a heart that remains attached to Allah above everything else. It hopes, but it does not become consumed by hope. It loves, but it does not allow love to replace trust in Allah. It desires goodness, but it accepts that Allah's wisdom is greater than its own desires. Such a heart remains balanced because it understands that every matter belongs to Allah before it belongs to anyone else. Many people suffer not because they love someone, but because they begin placing their emotional stability entirely upon a future that has not yet been written. They start imagining outcomes, creating expectations, and building their happiness around possibilities that remain uncertain. As the waiting continues, disappointment begins affecting their worship, their peace, and even their relationship with Allah. The believer seeks protection from this. They ask Allah to purify their intentions and protect them from becoming attached in a way that harms their faith. They ask Allah to help them love with sincerity rather than desperation. They ask Him to keep their hearts focused upon obedience rather than distraction. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught believers that hearts are constantly changing. A person may feel strong one day and weak the next. They may feel patient one day and restless the next. This is why sincere believers regularly ask Allah to keep their hearts firm and guided. They understand that emotional strength is not maintained through willpower alone. It is maintained through Allah's help. During periods of waiting, Shaitan often attempts to create unnecessary distress. He encourages people to assume the worst. He fills their minds with doubts, fears, and endless speculation. He convinces them that they must know every answer immediately. He pushes them toward impatience and dissatisfaction. The believer responds by turning to Allah and asking Him to protect the heart from these influences. There is something beautiful about a heart that remains clean while waiting. It continues making dua without resentment. It continues trusting Allah without demanding immediate answers. It continues hoping without becoming overwhelmed by uncertainty. Such a heart experiences a peace that many people never discover because it understands that Allah's decree is always based upon wisdom. Sometimes Allah delays an answer because He wants the servant to grow closer to Him. Sometimes He allows waiting because there are lessons that can only be learned through patience. Sometimes He keeps the future hidden because revealing it too soon would not benefit the person. The believer who understands this begins viewing waiting differently. Instead of seeing it as empty time, they see it as a period of spiritual growth. This does not mean waiting becomes easy. Human beings naturally desire clarity. They want to know where they stand. They want certainty about the future. Yet faith teaches us that certainty belongs to Allah. Our responsibility is not to control the future. Our responsibility is to trust the one who controls it. The dua for a pure heart is therefore not merely a request for patience. It is a request for balance. It is asking Allah to prevent emotions from becoming harmful. It is asking Him to protect faith from being weakened by uncertainty. It is asking Him to preserve sincerity while the future remains unseen. Many people focus entirely on whether they will eventually receive what they want. The believer focuses on something even more important. They ask Allah to ensure that regardless of the outcome, their heart remains close to Him. If Allah grants what they desire, they want to receive it with gratitude. If Allah delays it, they want to wait with patience. If Allah chooses something different, they want to accept His wisdom with trust. This level of sincerity transforms waiting into worship. The believer no longer views the period of uncertainty as wasted time. Every dua becomes an act of devotion. Every moment of patience becomes a source of reward. Every effort to maintain purity of heart becomes a means of drawing closer to Allah. When you ask Allah to keep your heart pure while waiting, you are asking for something far greater than a specific outcome. You are asking for the ability to remain sincere regardless of what the future holds. You are asking for emotional strength rooted in faith. You are asking for a heart that remains peaceful because it trusts the wisdom of its Creator. And there is tremendous beauty in that kind of heart. It continues loving, hoping, and making dua, but it never forgets that the one who controls every future outcome is also the one who protects hearts from being lost within uncertainty. That is why the believer keeps turning to Allah, asking Him not only for what they desire, but also for the purity needed to wait for His decree with dignity, patience, and trust. The dua that seeks barakah in love intentions and the future. When people think about love, they often focus on emotions. They think about affection, attachment, happiness, and the desire to be close to someone they care about. While these feelings are part of human nature, the believer understands that emotions alone are never enough to build something lasting. There are many relationships that begin with strong feelings yet struggle because something essential is missing. That missing element is barakah. Without barakah, even things that appear beautiful can become sources of difficulty. With barakah, even simple circumstances can become filled with peace, contentment, and goodness that extends far beyond what people expect. This is why one of the most important du'as a believer can make for the person they love is asking Allah to place barakah in every aspect of the matter. Barakah is not merely an increase in quantity, it is an increase in goodness. It is when Allah places His blessing within something and causes it to bring benefit in ways that cannot be measured by worldly standards alone. A small amount becomes sufficient. A difficult situation becomes manageable. A relationship becomes a source of peace rather than stress. A future becomes more beautiful because Allah's blessing is present within it. Many people spend their time asking Allah to bring them closer to the person they love, but they forget to ask for barakah. They focus on the outcome while overlooking the quality of that outcome. Yet what benefit is there in receiving something if it does not contain Allah's blessing? What benefit is there in achieving a goal if it distances a person from Allah? weakens their faith, or fills their life with unnecessary hardship. The believer understands that barakah is what transforms ordinary matters into extraordinary blessings. This is why they ask Allah not only for a particular person but also for goodness within that person's character, goodness within their intentions, goodness within the future they may share, and goodness within every decision connected to the matter. There is wisdom in making this type of dua, because human beings often focus on what they can see, while Allah sees what remains hidden. A person may appear suitable from the outside, but only Allah knows the reality of their heart. Only Allah knows what kind of spouse they may become in the future. Only Allah knows what challenges may arise years from now. This is why seeking barakah is so important. It is asking Allah to place goodness into areas we cannot fully evaluate ourselves. Many believers become anxious because they feel responsible for figuring everything out. They analyze every detail. They search for certainty about the future. They try to predict outcomes that belong to the unseen. Yet the believer who seeks barakah understands that ultimate success does not come from perfect planning. It comes from Allah's blessing. A person may possess every worldly advantage, yet without barakah they may struggle to find peace. Another person may have limited means, yet Allah fills their life with tranquility because His blessing is present. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, frequently taught believers to seek Allah's blessing in their affairs. This teaches us that success is not measured only by obtaining what we desire. Success is measured by receiving Allah's blessing within what we receive. A future filled with barakah is more valuable than a future built solely upon emotions. A relationship blessed by Allah is more valuable than one sustained only by temporary feelings. Another beautiful aspect of this dua is that it purifies intentions. When a believer sincerely asks Allah for barakah, they begin examining their own heart as well. They ask themselves whether their intentions are pleasing to Allah. They ask whether their hopes are rooted in sincerity or merely personal desire. They ask whether their plans are drawing them closer to Allah or distracting them from Him. This self-reflection is important because barakah is closely connected to sincerity. The more a person's intentions are aligned with pleasing Allah, the more they open themselves to His blessing. When someone desires marriage for the sake of building a home rooted in faith, mercy, and obedience to Allah, they are seeking something noble. When they ask Allah to bless that intention, they are placing the matter under His guidance and protection. There are times when people become so focused on obtaining a specific outcome that they neglect the spiritual condition of their own heart. They spend months or years worrying about what will happen, yet very little time asking Allah to bless whatever He chooses for them. The believer who understands barakah approaches things differently. They continue hoping, but they also ask Allah to place goodness in every outcome He decrees. This creates tremendous peace because the believer knows that Allah's blessing can transform any situation. If Allah brings the person into their life, they ask Him to bless the relationship. If Allah delays the matter, they ask Him to bless the waiting. If Allah chooses a different path, they ask Him to place blessing within that path as well. Their trust remains with Allah because they understand that His blessing is more valuable than any specific outcome. Barakah also extends beyond the present moment. A believer does not think only about today. They think about years ahead. They think about faith, family, character, children, and the journey toward Allah. They ask Allah to place blessing in every stage of that future. They ask Him to make the relationship a means of increasing gratitude, worship, and closeness to Him. This is what makes this dua so powerful. It shifts the focus from simply receiving what we want to receiving what is truly beneficial. It reminds us that the greatest gift is not merely finding someone we love. The greatest gift is having Allah place His blessing within that love. When barakah enters a matter, Allah creates goodness that extends beyond human expectations. He places peace where there could have been conflict. He places contentment where there could have been anxiety. He places mercy where there could have been hardship. This is why the believer continually asks Allah to bless their intentions, bless the person they care about, and bless whatever future He chooses to write. Because in the end, a future filled with Allah's barakah is worth far more than any future built solely upon human plans. And when Allah places His blessing within something, He transforms it into a source of goodness that continues benefiting a person in both this world and the next. The dua for guidance when feelings and faith seem to pull in different directions. There are moments in life when the heart wants something deeply, yet the mind remains uncertain. A person may care sincerely about someone. They may think about them often, make dua for them, and hope for a future that includes them. At the same time, questions begin appearing within the heart. Is this attachment bringing me closer to Allah or distracting me from Him? Is this feeling helping my faith grow or making me emotionally dependent upon something uncertain? Is this path truly beneficial, or am I simply following what my emotions want? These are not easy questions to answer. Human beings are emotional by nature. Allah created the heart with the ability to love, care, and form attachments. There is nothing wrong with these feelings when they remain within the boundaries Allah has set. The challenge arises when emotions become so strong that they begin influencing decisions more than guidance does. This is why one of the most important du'as a believer can make is a dua asking Allah for guidance whenever feelings and faith seem to be pulling in different directions. Many people assume that guidance is only needed when making major life decisions. In reality, guidance is needed whenever the heart becomes emotionally invested in something. Strong emotions can sometimes make situations appear clearer than they actually are. A person may become convinced that a particular outcome must be good simply because they desire it. They may overlook warning signs. They may ignore important questions. They may focus so heavily on what they want that they stop asking whether it is what Allah wants for them. The believer understands that emotions are valuable, but they are not meant to replace divine guidance. Feelings can inspire us, motivate us, and help us appreciate blessings, but they do not possess complete knowledge. Only Allah knows the unseen. Only Allah knows what exists beyond the present moment. Only Allah knows the future consequences of today's decisions. This is why sincere believers constantly ask Allah to guide their hearts. They ask Him to show them what is truly beneficial. They ask Him to help them distinguish between sincere hope and emotional attachment. They ask Him to make the path of goodness clear and to protect them from following desires that could lead them away from what is best. The story of many people is not that they lacked feelings. The story is that they trusted their feelings more than they trusted Allah's guidance. They became so attached to a particular outcome that they stopped seeking clarity. They stopped evaluating matters through the lens of faith. Eventually, they found themselves hurt, confused, or distant from the peace they once had. The believer seeks protection from this by making dua. They ask Allah to guide them toward what pleases Him, even if it differs from what they initially wanted. This requires sincerity because true guidance is not merely asking Allah to approve our plans. True guidance is asking Allah to lead us toward His plan, even when it differs from our own expectations. There is tremendous beauty in this kind of dua because it demonstrates humility. It acknowledges that Allah's knowledge is greater than ours. It recognizes that the future belongs to Him. It accepts that there may be details hidden from us that completely change the reality of a situation. Sometimes the greatest blessing is not receiving what we want. Sometimes the greatest blessing is being guided away from something we thought we wanted. There are countless believers who once prayed desperately for a particular outcome, only to later realize that Allah's decision was far better than their own preference. At the time, they could not understand it. Years later, they thanked Allah for guiding them differently. When feelings become intense, patience also becomes important. Strong emotions often create urgency. A person wants immediate answers. They want certainty. They want clarity about the future. Yet Allah sometimes teaches patience by keeping certain matters hidden until the proper time. During these periods, the believer continues making dua and continues seeking guidance. This dua also protects the heart from becoming divided. There are people who know what their faith requires, yet their emotions constantly pull them elsewhere. They feel trapped between what desire and what they know is right. This internal struggle can become exhausting if it is not addressed through sincere reliance upon Allah. The believer asks Allah to bring harmony between their heart and their faith. They ask Him to place love where there is goodness and remove attachment where there is harm. They ask Him to guide their emotions rather than allowing their emotions to guide them. This creates peace because the heart is no longer carrying the burden of trying to figure everything out on its own. Another beautiful aspect of this dua is that it transforms uncertainty into worship. Instead of becoming consumed by overthinking, the believer turns to Allah. Instead of endlessly analyzing every possibility, they place their trust in the one who knows every possibility. Instead of allowing confusion to dominate their thoughts, they ask Allah for clarity and guidance. This does not mean every answer arrives immediately. Guidance is sometimes revealed gradually. The heart becomes calmer, the path becomes clearer, priorities begin aligning. What once seemed confusing starts making more sense. Allah guides His servants in ways that strengthen both their faith and their trust in Him. When a believer sincerely asks for guidance, they are asking for something far more valuable than simply getting what they want. They are asking Allah to help them want what is best. They are asking Him to align their desires with His wisdom. They are asking Him to protect them from mistakes caused by emotion and to lead them toward choices that bring benefit in both this world and the next. And there is great comfort in knowing that the one who created your heart understands every feeling within it. He knows your hopes, your fears, your intentions, and your struggles. When you place those emotions before Allah and ask for His guidance, you are placing them before the one whose wisdom never fails and whose guidance never leads a servant astray. That is why this dua is so powerful. It reminds the believer that when feelings and faith seem to pull in different directions, the safest place to turn is always toward Allah. His guidance brings clarity where there is confusion, peace where there is uncertainty, and wisdom where emotions alone cannot provide the answers. The dua that asks Allah to remove what could harm your dunya and akhirah among the most sincere duas a believer can make for the person they love is not a dua that asks Allah to guarantee a particular outcome. It is a dua that asks Allah to remove anything that could harm their dunya and akhirah, even if that thing appears desirable at the present moment. This type of dua requires a level of trust that goes beyond the emotions because it places Allah's wisdom above personal preference. It acknowledges that while human beings may know what they want, only Allah knows what is truly beneficial. This can be difficult because when the heart becomes attached to someone, it naturally begins focusing on closeness, happiness, and the possibility of a shared future. The believer hopes for goodness and asks Allah for what is in their heart. Yet alongside that hope must exist something equally important: surrender to Allah's knowledge. There must be a willingness to say, "Oh Allah, if this matter contains goodness for my faith, my life, and my future, make it easy. But if it contains harm, remove it from me and remove me from it." This is not a sign of weak love. It is a sign of strong faith. It is evidence that a person values Allah's guidance more than their own assumptions. It shows that they understand a reality many people forget. Human beings can only judge according to what they know today. Allah judges according to what He knows about today, tomorrow, and every day that follows. There are countless situations where people became attached to some things that seemed perfect from their perspective. They saw no reason for concern. They imagined only happiness. They believed their prayers would be answered in the exact form they desired. Then Allah guided them away from that path. At first they felt disappointed and confused. They wondered why events unfolded differently than expected. Later they discovered wisdom they never could have recognized at the beginning. Some people were protected from relationships that would have weakened their faith. Others were protected from futures that appeared attractive on the surface but contained hidden difficulties. Some were guided away from paths that would have distracted them from their purpose, harmed their peace, or brought them regret years later. What they initially viewed as loss eventually revealed itself as mercy. The believer understands that not everything which attracts the heart benefits the soul. There are things that look beautiful in the present yet create hardship in the future. There are situations that seem promising while hidden dangers remain unseen. There are people who appear suitable while only Allah knows what lies within their hearts and what consequences may emerge over time. This is why asking Allah to remove harm is such a powerful act of worship. It requires humility. It requires admitting that your understanding is limited while Allah's knowledge is complete. It requires accepting that the one who created your heart understands what will benefit that heart far better than you do. Many people spend years praying only for what they want. The believer also prays for protection from what they cannot see. They ask Allah to guard them from future regret. They ask Him to protect their faith from becoming weakened. They ask Him to remove anything that could damage their relationship with Him, even if that thing initially appears attractive. There is something deeply comforting about placing these matters before Allah. The believer no longer feels responsible for uncovering every hidden detail. They no longer feel pressure to predict every possible outcome. They no longer carry the burden of trying to control the future. Instead, they place the matter before the One who knows every hidden reality and ask Him to choose what is best. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught believers to seek what is beneficial and to rely upon Allah. This balance is important. A person may sincerely hope for someone they love. They may take lawful steps and make sincere dua. Yet they also recognize that Allah's wisdom remains greater than their own desires. If Allah knows that the matter contains goodness, He is fully capable of bringing it to fruition. If He knows that it contains harm, then His protection is a blessing even when it arrives in a form the heart initially struggles to accept. This dua also protects a believer from becoming overly attached to a specific outcome. Many people lose their peace because they convince themselves that happiness can only exist if one particular situation unfolds. They begin treating their desired outcome as though it is the only path toward contentment. When things do not go according to plan, they feel shattered because their hopes are tied entirely to one possibility. The believer who makes this dua understands something different. They understand that Allah's mercy is not limited to one person, one opportunity, or one future. They know that if Allah removes something, He is fully capable of replacing it with something better. They trust that His wisdom encompasses possibilities beyond what they can currently imagine. Another beautiful aspect of this dua is that it protects both people involved. It is not merely asking Allah to protect you. It is asking Him to protect the person you care about as well. If there is harm in the matter, you ask Allah to remove it from both of your lives. If there is goodness, you ask Him to bless it and allow it to unfold in a way that pleases Him. This transforms love into something noble. It becomes less focused on possession and more focused on sincere concern. It becomes less about demanding a particular outcome and more about seeking Allah's pleasure. It becomes an expression of trust rather than anxiety. The believer eventually realizes that the greatest act of love is not always holding tightly to what they want. Sometimes it is trusting Allah enough to say, "O Allah, choose for me what is best. Protect me from what could harm my dunya and my akhirah. Protect the person I care about from anything that could harm them as well. If this matter contains goodness, place barakah within it. If it contains harm, remove it with your mercy and replace it with something better." That dua carries immense peace because it places the future in the hands of the One who never makes mistakes, the One who sees what we cannot see, the One who knows what we do not know, and the One whose decisions are always rooted in wisdom, mercy, and perfect knowledge. The dua of complete trust, placing the person you love in Allah's hands, every sincere matter, where a believer realizes that there is only so much they can do. They can make dua, they can purify their intentions, they can seek guidance, they can strive to remain patient and obedient to Allah. Beyond that point, the future enters a territory that no human being can control. It is here that one of the most beautiful forms of worship begins. It is the worship of complete trust in Allah. Many people find it easy to make dua when they are asking for something specific. They ask Allah to make a relationship successful. They ask Him to bring a certain person into their life. They ask Him to create opportunities and remove obstacles. These are all beautiful requests. However, there is a higher level of trust that develops when a believer reaches the point where they say, "O Allah, I place this entire matter in your hands because you know what I do not know." This is the dua of complete trust. It is the dua that comes from a heart that has stopped trying to control every outcome. It is the dua of a person who understands that Allah's wisdom is greater than their own hopes, fears, expectations, and plans. When a person truly loves someone, they naturally want what is best for them. They want them to be protected. They want them to be guided. They want them to experience happiness and success. Yet the believer recognizes that no human being can provide these things with certainty. Parents cannot fully protect their children. Friends cannot fully protect one another. Even spouses cannot guarantee peace, guidance, or safety for each other. ultimate protection belongs to Allah alone. This realization creates humility within the heart. Instead of carrying the burden of trying to manage every detail of the future, the believer places the person they care about before Allah. They ask Him to watch over them, guide them, protect them, and bless them in ways that only He can. There is something deeply peaceful about reaching this stage. Many people spend years trapped in worry because they continuously think about matters beyond their control. They wonder what another person is feeling. They wonder what decisions they will make. They wonder what the future holds. They replay possibilities endlessly within their minds. Their thoughts become consumed by uncertainty. The dua of complete trust frees the heart from this burden. It does not remove care. It does not remove concern. It does not remove sincere hope. What it removes is the illusion of control. The believer accepts that Allah is the one who controls hearts, circumstances, opportunities, and outcomes. The story of Prophet Yaqub, peace be upon him, teaches a powerful lesson about this trust. He loved his son Yusuf deeply. The separation caused immense pain. Yet despite the sadness he carried, he never stopped turning to Allah. He understood that the one who reunited hearts in the past was capable of reuniting them again. His trust remained alive even when circumstances seemed impossible. Many people believe trust means never feeling sadness. This is not true. The prophets experienced grief, longing, and hardship. Trust does not eliminate human emotions. Trust ensures that emotions do not replace reliance upon Allah. A believer may feel sadness while still trusting Allah. They may feel uncertainty while still relying upon Him. They may hope for a specific outcome while still accepting His wisdom. This balance is what makes complete trust so beautiful. The believer does not stop caring about the person they love. Rather, they care in a healthier way. Their attachment becomes connected to Allah instead of becoming a source of emotional dependence. Their concern becomes expressed through dua rather than endless anxiety. There are moments when Allah grants exactly what the believer hoped for. There are moments when He grants something different. There are moments when He delays the answer. There are moments when He redirects the entire situation. The believer who has reached the stage of complete trust understands that every possibility remains under Allah's perfect knowledge. This understanding protects the heart from being destroyed by disappointment. If Allah brings the person into their life, they are grateful. If Allah delays the matter, they remain patient. If Allah chooses another path, they trust that His wisdom contains goodness even if they cannot immediately see it. The believer begins recognizing that Allah's role is not merely to fulfill desires. His role is to guide His servants toward what benefits them in this life and the next. Sometimes that guidance aligns perfectly with what we hoped for. Sometimes it takes us somewhere completely different. In both cases, Allah remains the most wise and the most merciful. The dua of complete trust is therefore not simply a request. It is an act of surrender. It is the heart saying, "Oh Allah, You know this person better than I do. You know their future better than I do. You know what will benefit them and what will harm them. You know what is hidden and what is visible. I place them in Your care because there is no safer place for them to be." Few things bring peace to the heart like this realization. The believer understands that the person they care about is not being entrusted to chance, circumstances, or human plans. They are being entrusted to Allah, the one whose mercy never fails, the one whose wisdom never errs, the one who knows every hidden detail of every future event. As this trust grows, worry begins losing its power. The heart becomes calmer. The future becomes less frightening. The believer continues making dua, continues hoping, and continues seeking Allah's guidance. But they no longer carry the exhausting burden of trying to control what belongs only to Him. This may be the most powerful dua a person can make for someone they love. Not because it guarantees a specific outcome, but because it places the entire matter in the hands of the one who is more merciful to both of you than you could ever be to yourselves. And when a matter is sincerely placed in Allah's hands, the believer can move forward with peace, knowing that whatever Allah chooses will be guided by wisdom, mercy, and perfect knowledge. Love becomes most beautiful when it brings a person closer to Allah rather than further from Him. The strongest foundation for any future relationship is not constant worry, emotional attachment, or endless uncertainty. It is a sincere dua. When you place the person you love in the care of Allah, you place the matter in the hands of the one who knows every hidden detail, every future outcome, and every source of goodness. Continue asking Allah with sincerity, continue seeking His guidance, and continue trusting His wisdom. If that person is good for your faith, your life, and your future, Allah is fully capable of bringing your paths together in the most beautiful way. And if He chooses something different, His choice will always contain a wisdom greater than anything the heart can see today.